the chairman of the Board of Appeals for Belgrade, and it is November 18th, 2020, 7 p.m. And we will commence the meeting of the Belgrade Board of Appeals. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And first off, have a roll call. My name is Michael Hano, chairman. Jay Bradshaw.
I'm here.
Paul Blazer.
I'm here.
Dave Bonner.
Here.
Richard Bourne.
Here.
Thank you very much. And Anthony Wilson.
I'm here, sir.
Okay. First item of business would be the approval of the September 23rd, 2020 minutes of the Board of Appeals. Has everyone, all the board members had a chance to review those minutes? If there are no additions or deletions, I'd like to have a motion to accept.
Mike, this is Jay. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
Who seconded?
Okay, seconded by Dave Bonner. Thank you. All in favor, we will require a voice vote. I'm in favor.
I'm in favor.
Okay.
Yes.
Dave Bonner, yes. Jay?
Yes.
Norma?
Yes.
Thank you. Richard Bourne?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. The motion is passed. Okay, so under the old business on our agenda, we're here to discuss the consideration of an application for appeals dated September 3rd, 2020, filed by Jeffrey and Carolyn Stiff, represented by Chris Nagel, Esquire, and related to the Belgrade Building Permit number 78-19, issued on August 6, 2020, to Jody C. and Stephen C. Jones for a project at 326 Sandy Cove Road. On September 23rd, the board met and we remanded that application back to the planning board for further work. A findings of fact and conclusions was requested, in which they submitted that to, I believe, Anthony and the board in October, I think on October 6th. Does that sound correct? So having that submitted and reviewed, has everybody had an opportunity to review that information along with the application that was at hand?
Dick Bourne, yes.
Dave Bonar, yes.
Jay
Yes.
and Norma?
Yeah.
And I have myself. So we are in receipt of that findings of fact from the planning board. And if there are no questions, do anyone have any questions on this so far? As far as the completeness of the application?
No, Mike, do you want a motion to act
Yes,
on?
that was going to be my next.
Oh, okay. I would make a motion that we acknowledge receipt of the findings of fact from the planning board, as well as the responses from the parties, and that we acknowledge the application is complete, and we can move on to scheduling a hearing.
Okay, could I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay. Motion is seconded by Dave Bonner. So scheduling of a hearing,
Well,
Do we
let's have a vote on the motion first. If we could have a roll call vote on that motion, which
I'm
is the
sorry,
second.
Jim. I'm sorry, Jim. Yeah. Roll call motion on the motion. Michael Hano in favor of. Jay?
Yes?
Yeah,
Oh,
Dave? Yes.
yes,
Norma?
Yes,
And Dick Bourne?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor. The motion has passed. That we accept.
Mike,
The
you,
application is complete.
Mike, you need to vote.
What's that?
You need to vote.
Oh, I thought I did. I'm sorry. I'll vote yes.
I didn't hear you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so as far as scheduling a hearing for next month, do we have a date that's preferable to all parties?
Mike, this is Jake. Can I suggest we also act upon old business B, and then we'll just schedule the hearing.
Combine them?
I'm sorry?
Combine them?
Well, no, we've got to set a hearing date, which is listed on the agenda, but since the next article deals with Jack Sutton's application, if you're ready for a motion, I'd make the same motion that we acknowledge receipt of the planning board findings of fact, and that we acknowledge that the application submitted by Jack Sutton is complete, and that the information is ready to be part of a public hearing, scheduled for public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a second?
second,
Okay, Dave Bonner has seconded the motion under B. So we'll take a roll call vote. I vote yes to accept. Jay?
Yes?
Dave Bonner?
yes,
Norma?
Yes,
And Dick Bourne?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor is passed. So hearing date for next month. I guess we need a date that would be preferable to all parties. Jim, do you have any input on this?
I don't think we want to be meeting Christmas Eve.
No.
So a possibility might be Wednesday, December 16th, the week before. It's still on a Wednesday evening for you, if that's what you prefer.
Okay,
I don't know how that works for the board or for the parties.
it works fine for myself.
Okay, here.
yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay, Mr. Nagel?
Yeah, that's fine. And I'm speaking on behalf of Jeff and Carolyn Stiff, that date's fine with them as well.
Okay. So we'll schedule the meeting for December 16th at 7 o'clock.
I'm sorry, Mike, did you ask for Mr. Cunningham's?
Oops, I'm sorry, Mr. Cunningham?
That's quite all right. That date's fine for the Joneses and me. Thank you.
Okay,
I just want to check with Anthony to make sure that this Zoom account is available that evening. I'm not tied up with somebody else.
Let me check my calendar real quick. I think it is, but let me just double check here.
did Mr. Sutton agree also, Mike?
Yes.
yes, he did.
Yes, we can use this this account on that date.
Okay, thank you.
You want a motion on that one?
I think we're all set, right? Okay, so, we're all in agreement. We'll have the meeting on December 16th at 7 o'clock via Zoom.
If I may, Mr. Chair, could we talk for a minute just about what that meeting will be like? Council have been speaking a little bit in advance, and I think we've come to agreement, but I want to make sure that the board is all right with these rules.
Please.
This would
Yes,
be
please.
advertised as a public hearing But when we get into the meeting, under the ordinance, this is an administrative appeal from the planning board. And an administrative appeal from the planning board is heard on an appellate basis. You're conducting an appellate hearing, which means we're not taking testimony anew, starting at the beginning. But what the planning board will be doing is looking at the planning board record, which the manager has transmitted to you. And you will look at that record of what's in front of the planning board to see whether there was an error of law, whether the facts are supported by substantial evidence, and whether the decision was arbitrary and capricious. No new evidence is taken. And so that rule will apply whether it's the parties, if Mr. Sutton were to speak, for example, or the Stiffs, whether that's the counsel for the parties, whether that's Mr. Nagel, or whether that's Mr. Cunningham, or whether that's any member of the public. So it's an appellate hearing solely on the record. And at any point, the parties will all reserve the right to object if someone goes beyond what's in that record. We don't want to turn this into a court of law. We want it to be an appellate hearing. My suggestion is that what you do is you open the public hearing, allow counsel to make their arguments, allow the parties to make their arguments, the public to make their arguments. You can ask questions. Then it would be time to close that public hearing portion and go into deliberation. When you're in the deliberation mode, you may ask questions of the parties, of their counsel, of the public. You may ask questions, but they don't have a right to speak unless you ask them for information or you request that they speak. I don't think I've gotten myself in trouble with counsel so far. And then the board can deliberate, and when it's deliberating, the board might make a decision that night. The board might want to have a proposed decision prepared by me or by the parties for them to look at, for you to look at and figure out how you want to come out on that, and maybe delay the actual decision till January. Whenever you do make your decision, a written notice of decision has to be issued within 7 days. So if you want to make sure that you have a decently drafted decision and not something with Jim's horrible handwriting, it's bad. Then I think we might want to have the deliberation and maybe give guidance to either me or to the parties to come in with a draft decision for you to take a look at the next meeting, and then you can make your actual decision. But at any rate, the hearing starts on the December meeting. I think I've talked about the process. I think we're all in agreement on the process. And all the materials are before you. All the briefs have been filed by the parties, and you should all have that. So I think that's all, but I would welcome through the chair any comments from Mr. Nagel or Mr. Cunningham if I've misspoken or if there's some issues that I haven't addressed.
This is Chris Nagel. I think Jim's doing a wonderful job, and I agree with everything he said.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Cunningham?
And I'll second that. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Then that's, I think, I don't think we need any motion for that. I think that's the procedure and we all understand it. Do we want to put that in writing, or is that clear enough that we don't need to?
Well, I don't think we need to if all the parties have agreed, unless you feel differently.
I'm okay.
Jay?
Is it reasonable to ask if the parties are going to be making some sort of a presentation? We've got, a pile of documents here. Is it possible to get sort of a guide as to how those are going to be used, so that if they're referring to a document, we're not scrambling on our computer or through a binder to find it? I mean, like a table of contents or something. Is that possible, or what do you think?
I can work. Well, I can work with the manager to prepare a table of contents of the materials that have been submitted to you, if that would work.
I guess I was thinking more in terms of the order of appearance
Okay.
as documents would be presented from the parties.
Counsel, how are you going to-
If they're going to be, I don't.
If I can just weigh in, I understand your point that it's really hard to point to a document. I have attached to the memo I submitted on behalf of the Stiffs I think 4 or 5 exhibits that are really the key documents that I think you need to look at least in terms of what our arguments are based on. So I do think, though, I mean, I think in most cases, people need to refer to the record, and I think we'll all need to just have either print out what the town manager sent us and have it in a notebook, or have access to it while we're at the meeting. That's been my experience.
Will do. I was just thinking sort of from a flow standpoint of, you know.
What council might do when making their presentations is say, I'm going to refer now to X and give you a minute maybe or something to get to that document. And if a table of contents to the record that was sent to you would help, I can help prepare that.
No, I don't feel that strongly about it. I mean,
Okay.
as long as they refer to we've all got the same packet that Anthony provided, they can refer to the file name. That would be great. There was one typo in one of the files. There was a document.
November 13th, I think.
Yeah, it said stiff BOA memo. I think it said 9/13 in the original folder, but it's actually 11/13. But the document is fine. It's just the file name.
Okay.
That works. There's no need to pull a separate thing as long as we can make sure we're focused on whatever document they're working with.
Well, I can just say that when it comes time for the STIF presentation, I would appreciate it if somehow you have the memorandum that I prepared available to follow along with and be able to quickly get to the 4 or 5 exhibits. That's all I would request.
Will do.
This is your most recent memo, right, Mr. Nagel?
Yes.
Okay, does anyone else have anything? Jim, any more?
I think I've spoken enough, but Mr. Cunningham has a comment.
Cunningham?
Thank you. Just a question for procedure, Jim. Maybe you could weigh in on it. Because the 2 appeals have different bases, I'm assuming that they would be dealt with separately, not trying to mix all of the STIF's issues and then Mr. Sutton's and then have a mingled discussion. I think they should be separate.
Mr. Haino and I were having that conversation today as to whether to have one public hearing at which everybody makes their case and then have, or deal with these separately. And you make a good point. There are differences in issues and tenor that there's no real efficiency gained by mixing them into one hearing. So I think it's up to the board as to how you wish to proceed, but probably better to keep them separate. It will be the same record. Similar arguments, but different enough that we should probably proceed separately.
I agree.
I agree.
So on the same night, we open one hearing and close it, and then open a second hearing and close it?
That's correct. You may want to deliberate on the first a little bit before you go on to the second, or you may want to wait and deliberate on them after you have 2 public hearings, whatever you think works best for you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And just Mike, one other question. So at this point, is Norma, you're going to be notifying DEP and doing that type of stuff, or does Anthony? We just need to make sure that the notification is done.
That's a good question. I'm not sure how they're planning to handle that. I don't know, Mike, have you and Anthony discussed that?
No, we have not.
I would just look to Jim for advice on that.
I'll follow up with Anthony on that piece. This isn't a variance. Normally, if it's a variance, you have to notify DEP. I'm not so sure where it's just a shoreland matter that there's an obligation.
Okay.
Let me research that. I'll follow up with Anthony and we'll figure out what we need to do with DEP.
I read that, you know, and it's everybody, it's the abutters and the town people and the select board and DEP. But anyway.
We'll follow up as appropriate.
Yep.
Thank you for the thought on that.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have anything else? I guess we're ready to adjourn. Could I have an emotion for adjournment?
I move we adjourn.
Said that.
I just wanted somebody else to do it.
Yeah. Thank you, Dick. And seconded by Norma?
I second it.
Okay, thank you very much. My vote is yes. Jay?
Yes.
Norma?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Mr. Bourne?
Yes.
Okay, the motion is approved. Thank you very much.
Right, you're right. You're a yes, right?
I did.
I'm missing you. I'm sorry.
Oh, God, how could you do that?
Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll see you on the 16th of December.
Thanks all. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good Thanksgiving, everybody.
You too.
Thanks.